will go ahead and call this regular meeting of the Waterbury Select Board for Monday, January 20th to order.
Is it recording yet?
Yes, recording on this. The first item on the agenda is to approve the agenda. Is there a motion? Roger?
I'll move to approve the agenda with the exception of removing the consent item minutes as the minutes are not available.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Motion by Roger, second by Kane. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great, agenda is approved. With that, we will move right to the public. This is an opportunity for folks to address the board for anything that's not already on the warrant agenda. We ask that you keep your remarks brief, and if needed, we can schedule things for a future agenda. Is there anyone who would like to speak on public? Sandy, yes, come on up. Thank you.
Sandy Seda, Waterbury Center. Mine's more of a comment, or big comment, because I know that the employees have considered unionizing, and I wanted to voice my opinion on that. And I kind of have to write things down because I don't really. As a former small business owner for over 10 years, I know how important employees are to your business. Employees' happiness reflects positivity on the business and their service. I work in accounting. My first thought was to crunch the numbers, compare salaries and benefits for other comparable towns, all the things that a number cruncher does, but that's not what you need to hear. Retaining employees is more cost effective than recruiting, hiring, and training new ones. The local options tax should support economic growth by funding projects that maintain or improve infrastructure, which is essential for economic development. Additionally, a portion of the tax revenue should go to the general fund, which can help defray the cost of staffing, including comparable wages and benefit expenses. Expenses such as the employee requested $25,000 has been allocated to 2025 with local option tax for the security system for the employees, and possibly allocating for the one-time spending such as the $95,000 transition cost of the insurance deductible. This ensures the town can provide essential services to residents and visitors, fostering a stable and attractive environment for economic activities. Employees should leave due to retirement or relocation, not dissatisfaction. Recruiting qualified local employees is challenging and costly if you can find new employees. In the memo issued during the December 2nd meeting to the Select Board about the CCC tax, Tom noted and King verbally agreed that there currently is a highly competitive marketplace. If you look at the number of VLCT classified employment opportunities and how long they've been listed, you see it's nearly impossible to find staff. I'm sure there's several towns that would love to hire your trained, experienced staff if they can. If you lose your employees or they have a negative attitude, who will take care of this town and the services we provide to the visitors that come in? Do not cut off your nose to spite your face, and remember a significant portion of the employees are also voters. I hope you consider this and that you do what you can to keep the valuable employees that you currently have. I actually have another one, but I don't know if somebody else wants to go first.
We had two folks just join, so once more I'll just note that this is public comment for anything that's not on the warrant agenda. Anyone else on public comment? All right, you did keep to your 3 minutes and we'll go before 7:10, so I'll allow one more to go ahead.
This is in regards to the September 23rd special meeting. There's a problem, I think, with the open meeting laws because, as Roger said this morning or this afternoon, the meetings still haven't been posted for December 10th or 11th, but they were approved, and I'm not really sure how they were approved. They haven't been seen, but they're still not on the website, so that needs to be done because that's a violation. And on the WADA request, I was wondering how many members have an affiliation with WADA, and if you could tell me who's affiliated with the Waterbury Area Trails Association as far as staff, as far as select board members. Is anybody?
I'm a member of WADA.
Okay.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
And if any household members are, or family, et cetera, have personal or financial interest in donating to WADA? No? Okay. Well, I heard that Ian's partner Logan is the vice president and of the organization, and Ian also on both of his interviews on trying to become select board has stated very clearly that he's a member of the alliance and he believes in it. And I think according to the conflicts of interest dated March 18th and signed by everyone present on the board, Ian should have reclused himself in that, and he should have said that his wife or whatever his partner was the vice president, because I think clearly that's a violation. And because, I just don't really understand why it was, the pickleboard and skate park, which I'm not necessarily in favor of those either, but they've been asking for years and months, but they've been denied except for the ARPA money. But yet, in 30 minutes, we pushed this through. And there was kickback a little bit, definitely from the two people that were sitting here, but also some of the select board members felt that there was, maybe it should be moved. Even Alyssa, I think, said something about moving it, but we didn't. And I kind of feel that because of the conflict of interest, that if we can rescind this allocation, I think it should be presented for review and approved by the voters at a town meeting as a separate article, just like the senior center had to do for $6,500 and Maker's Beard for another $2,500. So.
Lots there. I'll just say offhand, without having the policies in front of me, I don't feel comfortable responding immediately, but we do have next meeting agenda, so happy to wait. Thank you. Any other public comments? Oh, Mike, what?
I actually have a copy of them, and I highlighted where it's an issue. Yeah, conflict of interest.
Just Sandy, just in response, I know a lot of folks on the select board and other committees are members of different organizations, but to me, sometimes that doesn't even mean that, if you feel you have a perceived conflict, many of us, I know myself, I'm on the Friends of the Waterbury Reservoir, and, if they get discussed, I recuse myself. But I think even just being a member, especially just being a member of an organization, doesn't necessarily, because I know you might exclude 2/3 of the town of Waterbury if they're just because they're members, if they come before, a board.
Right, well, my problem is his
If
partner
they-
is vice president of the
Right,
board.
I
And
understand.
That's definitely a violation.
I understand that if you're definitely an officer, you should be recusing yourself.
And Ian signed that, so.
Right.
Thank you. Yep.
I'll let you go. To be clear, I'm not trying to minimize this. This is my third meeting. I'm not quite sure how we're supposed to address this on public comment. I think if the board wants to discuss next meeting agenda, if we want to revisit this, that's fine to do. I'm just stating that I'm trying to recognize that right now in terms of
So,
what we're doing.
but as far as me saying, is there a way that we can rescind that and put it on the articles for the
Well,
town to,
All right,
because
next,
today's the last day, right?
not necessarily. So we have review draft warning for a town meeting on our
Okay.
agenda for tonight,
All
and we'll
right, I
get into
wasn't
all the
sure.
other things. But no,
Okay.
this is not the
Thank
last
you.
call. Yeah.
Thank you for your time.
Can I respond
Yep.
just quickly? Just Sandy, thank you very much. And this was a consideration of mine before that meeting. I was aware that water was, asking the select board for funding. And I took that very seriously, and I read what you printed out. I'm happy to take another look at it, but I did not think that I needed to rescind myself, but I'm happy to take another look, and I really appreciate you bringing this.
Well, the thing is that it also says on there, if there's any reason there could possibly, the public could possibly consider the fact that it is a conflict of interest, that perception alone is all it needs to be.
Right. Yep.
So,
again, I didn't think so, but I'm happy to take another look at it and we can discuss it further.
Any other comments? And I'll just name that, I think as a board, we're trying to do our best to be better.
Oh,
That's why we were careful on the agenda tonight. It's why Roger stepped down this chair and just named
That
that.
was very impressive.
We're all volunteers trying to do our best, but appreciate you working to keep us honest. All right. With that, I'm going to move us to our next item, which is Planning Commission Town Plan Update. We have multiple Planning Commission members here, Chair Martha Stackis, Member Billy Vigdor, and Member Katie Gallagher online. Martha was kind enough to join us back in December as we were working through the budget process, and it came up that this kind of annual check-in had been on the docket, and it seems like tonight was a good night to bring it back up. So floor is yours, Martha, in terms of any and all updates you have to share, and I'll name for the board. What I conveyed to Martha was kind of, this was a great opportunity for a brief overview. Board can ask some questions, just to make sure we're all staying oriented with what the Planning Commission is doing, because it's a lot.
Well, a lot, but it's very focused. And so I think I'm going to do the same. I wanted to keep my time to a minimum, so I kind of wrote it all out, and I'll just kind of read it, and that will expedite the process, so I won't stray too far. So the purpose for me here is to update the select board, and I'm going to primarily speak to the update for the municipal plan. And for others on the board, or others online in the public, I just thought I'd run through some of the criteria. As we talked last time, this is a state-required process every 8 years. It's the last full municipal plan was done over 10 years ago in 2013, and it was amended in 2018, primarily to meet the energy requirements, but other criteria as well. The goal of the town, of the municipal plan, is to meet requirements of 24 VSA Chapter 117, the Municipal and Regional Planning and Development Act. And there's 12 criteria, 12 required elements in that. And it includes a land use plan, a transportation plan, utility and facility plan, energy plan, flood flood resilience plan, and addresses educational facilities, economic development criteria, development trends and plans, and of course, housing. The RPC, Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission, will confirm that the town is actively engaged in implementing our municipal plan. The plan will be shared with adjoining towns and presented to the select board for adoption, and then the Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission will approve it. So it's a pretty significant process. The Planning Commission is utilizing the Agency of Commerce and Community Development resources such as the Municipal Plan State Planning Manual and keeping smart growth principles in mind. So I didn't bring it, but there's a whole manual that actually is a huge help to guide us and walk us through it, and we can certainly share that. It's available online. I think it's also important to recognize what the purpose of the municipal plan is, or the benefit, and it is to empower our local decisions of zoning, subdivision, flood hazard regulations, and capital budgets, programs, and impact fees. It's a tool to help guide the plan in statutory regulatory proceedings. And it is looked at and aids in qualifying certain state and federal programs, such as community development and housing funds, or bicycle and pedestrian facility funding. So our plan is looked at by the regulators when contemplating we apply for a grant in a number of different areas, whether it is applicable to what the town's goals and objectives are. So, it's a big project. The process will be phased, or is being phased, and it's again by the guidance of the Municipal Planning Manual. Back in August last year, we started doing phase 1 of a community assessment and reviewing our current plan to look at different aspects of it. The next phase will be a visioning, community visioning, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. And then we'll move into identifying goals and objectives, and then map out a future. And I shared this last time, we have a draft schedule that covers 2025 and 26. It's a little mushy, sliding a little bit, and I'll talk about why that is in a minute. So how are we doing? Like I said, we started the community assessment, and we've spent a little bit of time reviewing the current plan. We've created and conducted a community survey, which I hope you all took. We are posting information on the town website. We have what's called Plan WTB section of the website, town website, and we're going to continue to update information on that. We reviewed the current municipal plan and looked to identify what will be, there are going to be some new components. We've noticed and invited a wide range of town committees, nonprofits, and other organizations with particularized interests in Waterbury to review, provide updated data statistics, and comment on the relevant chapters of the current plan. This is all part of the community assessment phase. I just want to be clear what I'm talking about. We've prepared an RFQ for consultant services and issued that to garner what services of expertise may be available to assist the Planning Commission. And we're preparing a proposal for the ACCD Municipal Planning Grant funding of $30,000 with a $3,000 town match. That proposal window will open next week, January 27th. So we haven't even been able to submit it to the state yet. Excuse me. And those awards don't come out, won't be announced until quote-unquote April. I don't know if that's April 1st or April 30th, but April 2025. So we have, for the most part, I would say, we're reaching the end of our community assessment phase. I'll say none of these really start and end, they sort of intertwine, because we'll always take input and we'll always take updated data, but we need to sort of keep moving forward. So now we're moving into visioning, and as at our last Planning Commission meeting last week, we set some draft target dates for our first visioning sessions. We're looking at 3 in-person visioning sessions that are begin after town meeting day. I think that, I don't have the dates in front, oh, I do have the dates. They're like the 12th, March 12th, 20th, 29th, and April 2nd. And one or two of those, Katie? One or two, I can't remember. One will be virtual. So we'll do 3 in person and 1 virtual. And that's just the sort of the beginning of it. We're really in the thick of planning details for the community visiting phase, where that includes planning, creating outreach and communication materials, and generating additional ideas of how to touch members of the community, how to engage and get input. Billy's come up, for example, Billy's suggested we can utilize opportunities at Winterfest events to get input from community members. But the visioning sessions will really sort of kick off, well, we'll have those before town meeting, but the sessions will be after town meeting into April and so on. We're looking to get the word out at a very wide array of venues and opportunities. So we have webinars, we have our Planning Commission meetings, Winterfest, a table at town meeting day we've talked about, in-person and virtual gatherings. I don't think I told you this, but I was thinking about a photo contest, like, submit a photo of what is important to you in the community. We're trying to be as broad and all-inclusive as possible. And that includes even town officials, fire department, town clerk, wherever. Anything. We're open to any suggestions. That's going to continue into the spring and summer, and then we will try to take all of that information. We will have our consultant on board, and we'll move into the goals and objective identification for the next phase. So, I guess I could have said this, it needs to be done by the end of 2026, but we're looking to get, it's not a but, we are looking to keep the process moving and engaging, covering the multiple seasons. You know, wintertime, it's kind of hard sometimes, we think, to get a hold of people, but we've talked about different opportunities to get input. So, preparing materials. Actually, I wanted to thank the board for adding funding to the budget. You know, I waved around the municipal plan at the last time I was here, and that 200-page document is a monster as far as I'm concerned when you come right down to actually putting words in a file, on a page. And so the scope of work that we put out originally for our RFQ, and I said this then, they expressed that we were asking too much for the amount of money that we were proposing it would cover. And so we are working to refine our budget. We know that in the visioning sessions, we're gonna want, you know, easels and pictures and Post-it notes and just all of those kinds of things, which, you know, Katie put together a budget just in the last day or so that's around $1,000 for those kinds of materials. So that's the update, I guess I would say. If there's an ask that I can add to the update, being able to expend some of these, to get some of these materials done and produced beforehand, would, you know, I don't know how we do that. Do we come to you at that time? Do we, you know, get our budget better refined, which we will have to do as part of the application into the municipal planning grant. I'm jumping around here now a little bit, but we'll apply for the municipal planning grant for this year. We'll apply again next year, when we're down into the sort of, I hope at that time, writing and refining and still communicating with the community. But I'd say we're anxious to get going. And that has been, the municipal planning grant was supposed to have been opened up back in November, and it's been significantly delayed till next week. So that's just caused a little angst in our schedule, which is another reason why I don't want to put up a schedule. And seeing Amy on here, the last thing I guess I should have recognized her earlier. Amy and I have been communicating on how a lot of the natural resource mapping, which is a big section, the whole landscape plan is, you know, future land use, existing environmental conditions. There's a lot of mapping work and data that we're trying to incorporate into the plan that'll have to be incorporated into the plan. You heard me rattle off all those different plans. Well, each one of those is going to include a map. You can almost be assured. There, I rambled, but I tried to get it as I could.
Great.
Is that all right?
You nailed it.
Perfect. Well, first I'll say thanks on behalf of the board to all of the volunteers on the planning commission, meeting maybe almost as often as we are during budget season to help make this all happen, so thank you. Katie or Billy, do you have anything to add as planning commission members?
Nothing from me unless you all have questions.
Yeah.
Nothing here.
Great, I'll start with the board. Questions for Martha or the rest of the planning commission? Yeah.
Probably the easiest question to get. You said the deadline is 2026. Is it like the end, like
Yeah.
December 2026?
Yeah, understand that preceding that is public hearings, adoption, select board public hearing, adoption, review of adjoining towns, review of the Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission. So, you know, almost should think about like summer of 2026
Right.
is really when you've got the document.
But I know like state fiscal year.
Yeah,
It's
no,
like July 1st.
Right.
So I said, do we have to be totally
No.
done by July 1st?
yeah,
Okay.
no, you know, want to be done by December.
Great.
Kate?
To kind of to Mike's point, so by the time we get to summer 26, we'll have a physical document is what you're.
I hope we have one by like first quarter-ish.
So I did make a note that you are, it does seem like you're accelerating your schedule. Is there a reason why?
I feel like we're behind schedule.
Oh,
We
okay.
started August of '24.
Got it, okay.
We've been doing community assessment. And I have to really applaud. We wrote to anybody and everybody that, we took a chapter. What we did was we took each of the chapter headings and we said, Historical Society, would you look at the history section? Transportation, would you look, send it to whoever we could, Katie, we send it to different public works and whoever we could think of that would know about transportation. And Joe, we sent Joe the housing section and asked him to give us updated statistics and then also review the existing chapter and if you want to give some comments. It's not the last time you're going to have to comment, we're going to come back to you, but at least get the data coming in.
Right.
So we've been doing that since August.
Okay.
And the community survey, we did
Yeah.
all through the fall and a month ago, I think. So now we're really moving into, okay, we have this data, and we're actually trying to decipher the data. And then now we're gonna go out and say, what is important to you? What is important to you about what do you see your community? And just take all that data, if you will. And so that's gonna be another 4 to 6 months, right? So into the summer, February, March, April, May,
Yeah.
June-ish,
Yeah.
right? See, so already and we haven't written anything. We
Well,
haven't,
the only reason I asked was out of concern for an accelerated schedule,
Yeah.
as we had accelerated our budget schedule.
Yeah.
And I was going to ask, why are you doing this to yourselves?
yeah, no, it feels that way. It's just a big, we meet 2 hours.
Yeah.
Well, you guys know, time just goes by.
Yeah.
And we get distracted on other things, we get into conversations, time goes by. So we're not really accelerating, I don't think. I'm more concerned that we keep kind of sliding backwards. The delay of not getting a consultant, that's,
Yeah.
that would help us keep on track.
Well, one of the things that sort of lie in the background too is we thought the bylaws, we did phase one, but the bylaws are also, outside of phase one, are very dated as well. So what we're really just trying to do is be snappy and be deliberate to just try to keep this process moving.
Got it. Thank you.
Other questions from the board, Roger?
I should probably know this, but one of my responsibilities now as executive director of Revitalizing Waterbury is to oversee our economic development officer, Ellen Steady. And I'm just wondering to what extent, I understand that you have taken on the economic development chapter, and I'm just wondering to what extent have you been able to work with him?
Yeah, Owen's been great. He came to one of our meetings. He was one of the ones that we sent an invite to, if you will. And he came to one of our meetings. He shared the tax information that he had already gotten. That was back in, terrible with dates. When was he at our meeting? Was it fall? He came in, he shared the plan that was approved or adopted by the select board, his plan that he had done, or the plan that RW had done before. We ask him something and he responds. He's been responsive, so.
Okay.
I'm not doing the economic section
You're
either.
not?
Robbie is.
Oh,
But anyway,
Okay.
we're all doing them, but we
Right.
have kind of taken pieces that were of interest to us.
I have a follow-up question. How much money do you need before the voters get a chance to vote on the budget on town meeting day?
I gotta get back to you on that one. The short term would be, the very shortest term would be for like having, I don't know how you do this, we contact through through Neil and Tom, just printing supplies, like this $1,000 of materials, poster boards, and if we're gonna do these sessions in the latter part of March into April, we wanna make flyers, we wanna, just those kind of printing materials, and so we came up with a rough budget of under $1,000.
And maybe, we're already operating in 2025, spending money.
We've got professional services line items for those sort of things.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, just it being under, we do all kinds of supply budgeting, it could be just part of the
Yeah.
town supply budget.
Yeah, I think what, and we meet on this topic next week, because we just got the RFQ back, we got a response back from SE Group, and so we know what they're willing or able, but I think that, as we flip that into the submission to the municipal planning grant, we may want to, augment what they do. All right, so if we know there's an opportunity for additional, to get them to do more work, and provide more expertise mostly, then, like we've had to cut back, we want you to review this, and they're like, well, we're not gonna review it, right? Well, they have the expertise to help guide us. They've done so many of these plans around the state. They know Vermont inside out and upside down, so, it just is gonna make our town plan better, quite frankly.
Good, thank you.
I'm all done.
Oh, yeah, no, I had a question and I was raising my
I'm
hand for
just
myself in
kidding.
case I got so down there who was going back. I'm curious, as select board members, particular ways you see as really important to be engaged. I'll just say these are sometimes processes that are happening in the background, and part of having you here tonight is to make sure this is on our radar and we're not suddenly getting a full plan that no one
Yeah.
has started reviewing yet, but I'm just curious, your opinion on like kind of key points to engage throughout this process, or how do you do that most effectively?
I just can't advocate enough for all of you to do what we're doing, and Billy's one of our best champions, is encourage people to participate. We've identified, in the community survey, we know sort of the demographics of who participated and how can we get, younger community members or non-homeowners, or, we need everybody. And so if you make an announcement at every one of your meetings, don't forget to watch with the planning commissions, don't forget to go see what Plan WTB is doing. Whatever you can do to help us advertise, I just can't say that enough. We're trying, but it takes an army.
I see we have a couple more questions. I'll just name for everyone that on the Waterbury VT website, waterburywt.com, you go to boards or meetings planning commission, and that's how you can get to the Plan WTB website, which has the timeline and lovely materials. And then we'll also just offer, particularly for town meeting day, if there's materials that would be useful in addition to your report and the town report. It's something we're always happy to do.
Yeah, we want to maybe put a table there, right, Billy? We're talking about having a table, and again, being, do you want to leave us a comment? We'll have Post-it notes. Like we're still pulling that together ourselves, the exact, but before, as people are coming in and mingling around, we'd like to have a spot.
Great. I would say it's noted tonight, and we can follow up with Tom or Neil or whatever. Yeah, that's great. All right, I'm seeing one from Mike, and then Ian, and we got to move on. I'm just noting we've got about 10 minutes left on this. There's a couple public comments too, so just board members, to the extent you can be concise. Mike first.
Mine's real quick. I don't have stock in WBB or Radio Vermont Group, but I would highly recommend that they're always looking for guests on some of their community programs, and people listen,
Yeah.
And I think that's a great,
That's a good one. I'm writing it down.
I would highly recommend, maybe once a month or something like that, get on a show.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Ian?
Yeah, very quickly to add to Alyssa's comment, is that community survey still open, and can they find it on the website, or where?
We closed it because we need to start
Yeah.
compiling. We went back and forth. We actually kept it open, I think, about a month longer than we originally planned. But at some point, you have to stop,
Yeah.
right? I thought about that, but
Great.
we need to take that data and start
Yeah.
saying, this is what it's showing us. But the visioning, again, the visioning sessions are really another opportunity. So, in many of the community survey questions, there was other, and you could write in. Same is true in the visioning session is, give us your comment. If you see something, if you have a priority direction you'd like to see Waterbury go, that's what we want to hear. And so that we can take all that information in, and then if, with the help of SE, I think it's going to be SE Group, with the help of SE Group, we can start to mold what those goals are, and then the objectives for those goals, and then action items that would get you to accomplish those goals, or those objectives and goals.
Roger?
Nope.
All right, you're done. Chris, you had your hand up.
I don't want to waste a lot of your time. Maybe I'll just reach out to you personally, if that's okay.
Sure.
But just a quick thought off my head. This visioning process, my concern is throughout this entire process of this municipal plan, are you taking into consideration the economic challenges of living in any community, and as it gets tougher as we go on, to try to be all things to all people through this visioning process?
Absolutely. That is a challenge. And what's really even another, makes me think of the challenge, and we've had several conversations about this, is, you can't talk about the housing section without talking about the energy section. You can't talk about the economic section without acknowledging that there's no housing. So the chapters actually intertwine significantly. And so we expect to get those comments. You need to have those comments, though. It can't just come from you, or just can't, be my opinion. The more you hear it, the more weight it starts to carry. And that's why we're trying to, it's the participation, volume of participation.
Other comments?
You may have already answered this, but how many people actually were involved in the community survey? How many people chose to participate?
409 surveys.
And how long was it available? I remember.
Katie, how long was the survey open? Do you remember? It was like 3 months?
I think it was about 3 months. I can check back on that,
Yeah.
but somewhere around 3
The
months.
31st of December.
Yeah, it was about 3 months. We got September, October, end of September, October, November, December.
That's typical of any of our surveys, all right, about 400 people.
We're feeling pretty good. We were beating the drum, putting signs up at Casey Bagel and anybody, calling the school board. And
Chris, that's pretty good. You always look at it, if you get like 13, 14% of whatever your target population, you're doing well.
yeah.
Would you consider announcing it again at town meeting day? Is it something we can bring up, just say for one more month or one more week, we're gonna open it, just because we may get a new group of people that weren't aware of it? We're really trying to get more participants. Just a thought.
Yeah, we can discuss it at our meeting. We have a meeting
Yeah.
on Monday night, so we can certainly
Even
talk
if it's for
about
a
it.
short period of time.
Yeah, no, I thought about, because the fact I was gonna be here tonight, to say it's still open, but I know it's, we had to draw the line at
Yeah.
some point.
Sure.
So. Okay?
Any other last questions or comments on this? Well, thank you again, Martha. Thanks to the planning commission members for, again, all your work and taking time tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. With that, I will move on to our next agenda item, which is review draft warning for town meeting. I want to start with a couple of disclaimers. So this draft warning for town meeting that we're reviewing for tonight is dated tonight, January 20th, 2025. Excuse me as I pull up on my email from Karen Petrovich, the town clerk, just noting that the latest we can warn town meeting, based on the March 4th deadline, is February 2nd. So we can do it any time between 1:23, so Wednesday, And so just to name, this is a draft, we are not gonna be signing and finalizing the warning tonight because it will not be legal for town meeting. There was miscommunication about that, so just totally acknowledging that we as a board need to find another meeting time before February 2nd to finalize that. We have next meeting agenda on our agenda, but it will need to be before our next regular meeting, Monday, February 3rd. So I just want to premise that as we're discussing this, that we're gonna have to find another meeting time. But with that, I will just note we have a couple of different items. So this is a full draft warning. The top articles that are in yellow are noting things that are by Australian ballot. What is in here is carryover text and has not been updated. That's correct, Tom?
Correct.
So we can just proceed on. So there's, yeah, just go a little higher, perfect. Tom is screen sharing, again, this was attached to the meeting warning for today. So this was a draft that Tom put together based on some of our conversation thus far and models from past year. Tom, this has gone to legal counsel for
Yes.
review in terms of legality, but I think we have a number of discussion topics for us here at the board. So one, Article 4 and 5 is what we've been talking about town meeting format. As was raised, I think, at Have Your Say Day, a question about changing the format of town meeting is actually about if we should adopt budget articles by Australian ballot and public questions by Australian ballot. Right now, we do both of those things on the floor. Again, if they were warned articles for town meeting, there would be the potential to change that. Right now, they are the first, or I should say, after we elect a moderator, they would be the first things we would discuss at town meeting. I guess I'll pause there for a moment to see if board members have any initial reactions on those. We can continue reviewing the article, but again, as currently drafted, we have both of those, and we're saying they're the first things they would discuss. Kate?
I don't know if this is a legal question. Why can't Article 4 and 5 be combined?
So I can check with council on that. In short, there's three things that can be done. One is the town can choose to adopt officers via Australian ballot. That's already been done. The second is the budget. The third is public questions. It's likely perfectly legal to combine all those. I don't see any reason why you can't. You might want to think about specificity and do you want to combine them?
Other questions, right?
My biggest concern on this, sometimes people don't understand, I know it probably could be explained at the town meeting, but if you don't see this in advance, I would maybe amend that to basically say, like, shall the town of Waterbury adopt all budget articles by Australian ballot pursuant to, as opposed to the town meeting process. That way people will know that's what we're discussing, because people may not know the way it's framed.
Like as opposed to a floor vote?
No, I'm saying that people may not think that that's just, that we now do it by, floor votes at
Yeah. No, I was just making a comment that to add, like, as opposed to voting on this from the floor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm hearing that. Other questions or comment? I will name for me, I have a question about the timing. Personally, I will say we expressed in general that we felt like, in general, attendance is stronger at the beginning of the meeting, so there was a desire to do this at the beginning of the meeting. I think I also heard some comments that sometimes it takes 15 minutes for folks to roll in with coffee. So I don't know, moderator to what we anticipate to be the longest or most intense conversation, if we don't want to throw in a little on-ramp about, our claims for fees or anything like that before then. I would just think that's one consideration I have. Is there anything else folks want to flag, noticing? So we heard from Mike, question about if we could add more legal specificity. I'm raising Timey. Amy, I'm seeing you have a hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to just jump off from what Mike was saying. I think in terms of, in my experience, writings at a 3rd and 4th grade level helps for comprehension just across the board, and that's to adult learners as well. And if it's not explicit here that it's to, I hear like adding it on the floor and all that stuff. We do a lot of votes on the floor, but to explicitly state that the intention here is to ask about removing town meeting as a function, it feels like in some way that really needs to be highlighted. That's a pretty significant shift. And unfortunately, that the way it's written right now, I don't feel that's going to land for the masses.
Thanks, Amy, appreciate that. I see a hand up from Roger, and I'll also just name, I think that's something for us to wrestle with the board in general, and just name, we can check with Tom. We do have certain things we need to meet in the legal warning, and I'm not opposed to seeing if we can make them better or clearer, but I think we may also have to recognize that we can't do everything we want to do in the legal warning, and what else we need to do, both speaking on the day of or maybe a supplemental document that goes out with that. I just want to acknowledge, for me, I don't know the constraints to which, I will say, I was the one who loved the flowery language at last year's town meeting. I read the whole for the laying out of roads, and it actually proved to be more complicated when it came to actually voting on a tax rate. So I will just name, I think a guiding principle in creating this was to be as clear from a legal perspective, but that may not be clear to a 4th grade reader. So that's just my initial response, but thank you. Roger, you had a hand up?
Yeah, I would agree with you that it would be preferable if we could consider other articles before we get into this, because I think the group, the assembled group needs a bit of experience of understanding how this works from the floor in order to get the concept of, do they prefer that sort of discussion, or would they prefer just to vote on this via Australian ballot? And then second, if I recollect, each select board member takes on an article and reads it, and then can provide some context. So that may address Amy's concern that yes, in the legal framework, it's fairly cut down, but that we can provide more explanation so that people have a better understanding of what they're voting on.
Thanks, Roger. Appreciate that. Other comments, Mike?
Just to take off a lot. I agree with what you said in basic terms, Roger, but someone who reads the warning at home, they may not even come. I think it's a great thing that we do explain things, but they may say, oh, this is having the effect of eliminating town meeting. So that's why I think you need some context. And it's just like when we've had stuff about the children's room, when we've had stuff about eliminating the police force, people turn out in droves. And you know, if people know what's happening, that may create some interest in coming to town meeting.
All right, I see Chris. And then
So I gotta say, I'm a little surprised that the board's still considering questions for Articles 4 and 5 in lieu of what I'll call not your efforts to deliver the information, but a catastrophic failure of turnout from the public, given two other alternative options to gain information about what they're voting on. And again, I expressed it before, my fear is that people will get out and vote. In the most part, yes, on town budgets, not knowing any of the background behind it, how they were structured and what they're about. Not to paint any bit of mismanagement on your part. I'm talking about moving forward in years to come, other boards that may be sitting in your place, board members that may be sitting in your place, that could possibly try to steer our town in a less economic, mindful manner. and the public will really have no, unless they're sitting here, will have no inkling of what's taking place and be able to rebut it and say no. So that's my big concern. And it's all about, you have to understand, I'll make it to the end game. I ain't got that many years left in the scheme of things. I worry about the young people, how they're gonna afford to stay here. You people like, there's a few of you on the board I consider young. The other few are my age.
I appreciate that.
But it's even the younger ones yet, And to put it into context, not to get off on the municipality, but when it comes to our school systems, we seem to want to educate our kids at any expense, but you're already driving the parents of some of those kids out of their home financially because they simply can't afford it. So what's that saying for the child? So if the parents can't afford it, how are the children going to be able to afford it down the road? So it's those types of issues that really concern me, deeply concern me.
No, I hear you, Chris. I'm gonna say, we'll keep moving through this. We're gonna come back. We're not done with this discussion. I just wanna orient folks to the rest of this, King.
I find myself agreeing with Roger that maybe we should move these articles down a couple. I'm not sure how far down we go, but I do think from witnessing the town meeting days of past, there is a trickle into the room, and by the time we get to Article 6 or 7, everybody's there.
Let people drink their coffee and have a donut.
I'm fully caffeinated for this vote.
May I add a second part, though?
Yeah.
I do think, to Mike's comments, adding as opposed to floor vote, like making it as clear as day, that what you're voting on is either keeping or eliminating a floor vote for future years is incredibly important.
So that's even going to me, it's going to maybe, if someone understands that right up front, they may not even, if they don't understand that's what's at stake, they may not even come to the meeting, so.
Great, so I just want to summarize what I've heard thus far is I'm hearing board support for potentially moving this down, so I'm going to encourage us to keep reading articles so we can think about where that down is. And a desire for additional clarity as is allowable legally, and then also it's something to revisit. And I'll just say, Chris, I heard you, and at the end of the night, I want to check back in with everyone about how we hear moving forward, about continuing these. Lisa, and then I gotta move us on.
Yeah, I think, in echoing what you both said about just trying to make sure people really understand that this is about, and I think using the word traditional would be good, because it is the tradition. So being as straightforward as we can so that people later don't feel like, we weren't forthright about what's happening. So I agree with the two gentlemen have just said.
Thanks. All right, I'm going to keep us walking through the articles just so that we understand what's in here in this draft, and it can inform our conversation when we come back to that. The next one we had was the claims of officers. It's pretty straightforward. I'll just state publicly that I will be prorating my chair compensation to Roger for his many months of service. I'm not pocketing the extra $200. So just so that it's known publicly, I don't think we need to vote it on the floor, but I'm confirming that's my intention with that. But otherwise, I think that's a fairly straightforward article. In the past, we have had someone who wasn't a board member make that motion, just for clarity. Let's see, though I spoke incorrectly in Article 6 is actually the reports, not the compensation. Article 7 that I just said was the claims, which is the compensation, I believe. 6 before that is the reports for the town report. So again, both of those have been pretty practical. I guess I'll just name in the past, in my mind, this is some of where we spoke to things. I also will add to my to-do list that we have a select board commentary that goes in the town report. I'm happy to draft that, but I want to circulate that to the board for feedback. Again, not on the floor, but it's just bringing that up for me. All right, Article 8, this is a fun one. I'll thank Chris, who I know did it in the past. I don't know who did it this year, but this was setting the date for tax rates. Some of us have sat in abatement hearings and understanding that these are late sometimes and we do assess penalties. Tom, I saw a hand up.
Yes, I have a suggestion about this article after talking to council. So this article is written the same way it's been written for a long, long time. after talking to council, what he said is, why? He said, why don't you simply say, to see what action the town will, to see if the town will fix the tax dates and specify the dates therein, the article itself. And after talking with staff, the preferred dates are August 8th and November 7th. This past year, they were August, I've pulled out the 15th or 16th and November 8th, I believe, but staff would like August a little bit earlier next year because it would otherwise conflict with an EFUD billing date. That's oftentimes the rub when these are moved a week or so.
Same time.
You don't want both paid at the same time, or you don't want staff billing for one, which takes an inordinate amount of time and effort in receiving checks for the other.
Can I repeat the?
But
can you
what
repeat
council suggests, we simply embed the dates in the article, and that there's no need to have a separate person from the floor say, I suggest we use these dates using the language.
Can you repeat the preferred dates, please?
So the preferred dates for staff are Friday, August 8th, and Friday, November 7th.
I'm curious from Newtown, where folks who have been on the board longer, the two instances that are coming to my mind is that obviously the pandemic, which is a pretty exceptional exception. I believe we chose to adjust dates differently to give folks more time, and that in some cases due to the school tax rate, it's been hard to have final numbers, and I'm just curious if you could comment on either of those.
It feels like every year when we're setting our tax rate and getting ready to mail bills, we're under the gun, waiting to hear from the schools about the final rates. It also feels like every year we get those rates a couple of days before we really need to know them. And the beat seems to go on. If school budgets aren't adopted, the Secretary of State has a legal process in place for dealing with that, so I think it's a good question. I just don't think we should plan on school rates not being available.
Other board questions, Mike?
I think it's a good idea to put the rates right up, because it's usually someone on the board just says, we're gonna do this, and everyone says, yes, yes, yes. You know, the only thing, we could always still, you know, by time town meeting comes, if we have put that in writing in the warning, and there's something that says we need to change the date, we could then make an amendment, you know, do something, but I don't think we're gonna know that early anyway. So, I'm all in favor of putting dates in, just keep it simple.
Other feedback, Kate?
Just a question, because my recent memory is not serving. How much do the dates fluctuate year to year?
Usually no more than a week.
Okay.
They're pretty constant. This is also the article where, again, using that pretty flowery language that Alyssa loves, someone from the floor specifies the dates, specifies that we don't take anything postmarked. It's got to be arrived here at Town Hall by the certain time on Friday, and specifies the interest and penalties.
And it's always been early August, and it's usually the Friday before deer season opens up, except for when the odd year that we have a late deer season, but it's almost always the Friday before deer season. That's how I plan.
Not gonna ask a follow-up on that. I'm hearing support on the board for being more clear and concrete in the wording of this article to directly specify the dates and the penalty rates and method of delivery. Is there any other concerns or comments on that? Roger?
I don't have any problems with including the dates. I'm just wondering if it makes sense to move it forward, given the fact that we continually have problems with the school board fixing their dates, and whether there's a concern from a cash flow standpoint. I mean, my inclination would be to move it back. We get usually at least one or two requests for abatement or it is not or consideration because people are away on vacation in early August and they forgot or whatever, which unfortunately we cannot accept as an excuse.
Yep. Oh, sorry, let me
I'm just wanting to see if moving it back a week wouldn't make more sense, so that it corresponds with the beginning of school or something like that.
Like mid-August.
Yeah,
A
maybe-
week
So the
maybe-
22nd, for August 22nd,
Yeah,
that would, if the school rates are a little bit delayed, that would give us a little extra time, because the statute is, top of my head, I believe it's a 30-day rule where they've got to be sent 30 days before the initial payment is due. And we're always here right at that mid-date in the summer to adopt the final tax rate.
that would make more sense to me.
And that's not an EFUD week.
Double check that.
Okay. Rest of the board seems minimal? All right, so I'm hearing that we'd like to move forward with including the specific dates and rates in Article 8, and then, but look, based on Roger's suggestion, at August 22nd and November 7th as those dates, assuming there's no other flaws. All right, we will continue on. Next up, we have the not flowery and extravagant Article 9, which is not for the laying out, but is just general government, highway, and library expenses, and noting that that would be either a specific dollar amount or as a rate or tax on the grand list. I believe this was in fact my fun back and forth with Bill Shepelek last year, and we settled on a rate, but just naming that we could choose to do it as a total amount of money or a rate. Tom, do you have any comments you're looking at?
So, interesting, when you have a different council year to year, he had the same comment. He said, why? Why not just put the amounts in the rate in your warning?
You always just make it your motion, but that's a very easy thing to do.
And again, there is a concern about the rate, and that was the back and forth last year, but you can provide an estimated rate. And you use the word estimated in your warning.
And I think the motion on the floor ended up being not to exceed, which did
Or
box
not to
us
exceed would be another.
box us in a little. I mean, it was fine, but we were bound to that when we then said it. Other folks have comments?
I tend to agree with whatever council Tom spoke with, whereas I think a rate tax on the grand list. Does it matter to property tax, as someone who doesn't pay property taxes?
You do.
You pay, I was
You
gonna
know,
say, you don't
right.
pay rent.
Yes, I pay,
Pay a second.
I pay rent, but I'm not, I'm not bound to 2 dates a year, it's 12. Does it make a huge difference whether it's a rate or a specific dollar amount on your tax bill?
No, well, I'll let maybe Tom respond to just saying the rate is what we're charging based on the grand list, based on
Right.
the assessed property of the home. So I guess the question is, we don't get that final value until when?
Really until April.
Until April. So I will say in the past, you also received a very lovely Bill Shepelek memo once about how there was a 0.7% deviation in the entire grand list of the town when they stopped taxing the Waterbury Reservoir Hydro Dam at market rate, and it became run of the river, and that was like enough of a swing in the total property valuation of the town that it like caused a change in what the board needed to vote on at the tax rate. So I guess I don't think we're anticipating that, Tom, just to name, but we don't have, it's like a numerator denominator. We don't have that total number we're
Right.
gonna set the tax rate on. Tom's estimated it based on conservative growth that you feel like is reasonable. But
That's reasonable.
what's your recommendation, Tom, as I'm talking us around in circles?
My recommendation is to, we can specify the dollar amounts because they're be embedded in the budget at that point, but to use the estimated rate, because on occasion, and there's nothing expected, but on occasion, there are grand list shocks, and towns have them every so often. Waterbury had that example, that's actually a good one. I can tell you in St. Albans, there was a building where there was 1,000 federal employees, and the building had a water break, and the building was vacant, and that property valued at $10 million was reappraised 2 or 3. That had a pretty big impact on the tax rate as issue. So on occasion, things happen that no one really sees coming. So I like an estimated rate, and I'll check with council on that wording, but that's wording I've seen in other places.
I'll go to Roger.
Just in response to Kane's question, as a taxpayer, the rate has a lot more meaning to me than the dollar amounts.
Well, that's what I was asking,
Yeah.
yeah.
Sorry, I missed the
That's-
question.
Yeah, that was what I was asking, is like.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
I would prefer
I've looked at the
separate.
budget, and so I sort of have some idea of what all these dollar amounts might mean. But just as a simple taxpayer,
Right.
the rate, I like to see, is it gonna go up a lot? Or is it gonna be about the same as last year?
Right,
That gives me what I need to know to vote on.
right. That was a good answer to the question.
I missed the premise of the question, so apologies for that, but we got to do the fun tax rate diatribe. Can I just ask my one question, Tom, is, I think this came up on the floor because we had the estimated versus surety, so I guess my one question is, though I recognize to a property player, the dollar doesn't, should we have the big dollar, say, comma, estimated to be a rate of X? Because
Yes.
I don't know if we can have a
Yeah.
legally binding warning if we don't have something sure, and so I'm unclear how you warn an estimated rate, but I'm hearing that having the rate named is important, so you can say, that's the one I'm used to.
Yeah.
Sounds
I
good to me.
I think that's the right answer, and we'll probably receive more education from Mr. Sheplick, and it never goes.
Other questions or comments? Right, I'm hearing in general support from the board around revising this to include specific dollar amount, once we find the budget, and then include the estimated tax rate based on that, for comparative purposes. Great, so Article 9 in short would be though the full budget
Yeah.
with all items. All right, Article 10 then is beginning to pull out specific things, and this is specifically the fire vehicle,
Ooh, I did that last year.
which was already approved, but specifying that the funds would be payback from local option tax. Anything else to add here, Tom?
Yes, late review of council, he just suggests that the word transferred was fine, but repaid might be a little more clear. So if people are okay with that, I can amend that right here. That'd be the same for Article 11.
Yeah, the word repaid instead of transfers.
And then the other piece, I just want to make sure this is clear. So I can say this from the floor at town meeting day. Articles 10 and 11, $690,000 in total. The tax stabilization fund has about $1 million sitting in it. However, that's an authorization. That's not doesn't mean I go the next day and borrow $380,000. So part of it depends on the town's overall cash, and part of it depends on the amount floating in the local option tax fund. The fire truck is available. Typically, the town has really good, strong liquidity until the summer, and then there's a bit of a dip. And then as soon as that first school tax payment is made, we have great liquidity again. And so that 380 is a max, and for Article 11, that 310 is a max. And for Article 11, the funds for that truck in full will not be needed for 18 months or so.
Kane, and then Mike.
To avoid a Sheplick comment on both of these articles, should we change the words up to not exceeding?
We've used the language, we've used the word up to in prior warnings when we borrowed, whether it was from ourselves or from a bank.
Okay.
Position ceiling, Mike?
You mentioned that in terms of like liquidity that we sometimes have come in summer, will our moving our date back to the 22nd have a negative effect to our potential liquidity?
Certainly, but it's for a week or two. So
I
it's
understand.
something that's
But we
manageable.
don't want to be debtors, you know?
Yep, so in the past, we have We have borrowed from the tax stabilization fund for liquidity purposes.
Okay,
and we
but
have
borrowed from
E-Fund
ourselves
for
if we
liquidity
had.
purposes, yeah.
That's a good response.
Thanks.
Great. Article 11, again, similar, looks like we've already adjusted, as we're saying, repaid. Any other questions or comments on that? Right, brings us to the next page, Article 12, to see if voters will authorize a sum of money to be expended from capital fund for capital projects. Tom, any comments on this?
Same comment. Council suggests just go ahead and put the amount of money.
What is the?
You got a big legal bill coming up.
You know, he does this for a lot of towns, and he
Yeah.
just said you're a little bit unique in not just specifying what exactly that amount is.
And the amount is?
I gotta
You gotta figure it out.
dig it up. Yeah, it's all there, but.
My follow-up question is then Article 13, we have 2025, including local option tax revenue, which includes $25,000 to the capital fund.
Yep, so
Do we
that's,
count that twice? I guess.
that's something I've gotta talk over with Rebecca a little bit. We had a conversation Friday about presentation, but that's always the issue, because the general fund transfers money into the capital funds. So historically, when the town is adopting the budget articles, you include the general fund amount less those transfers, and then you vote on those in the capital item. So we could take the same principle here, where we'd be voting on the capital budget, which would not include any local option tax funded items. At the same time, there's no legal requirement that Article 13 exists. Those items are embedded in the different parts of the town budget.
You lost me on the analogy with the general fund capital. Can you just repeat that
So
again for me?
back on Article, let me pull it up real quick. Article 9, when the specific amounts are discussed, it includes the total general fund budget and highway and library fund budgets. But there's transfers from the general fund into the capital. And so when that amount is calculated, we take out the transfer. Because otherwise, we would have already voted on it by the time we get to Article 13.
Mhm.
Okay.
And so we can take that same principle with respect to the local option tax, where you'd have three votes: a budget vote, a capital budget sans local option tax funded items,
Mhm.
and then local option tax funded items, if you will. Or you can have two votes.
I guess my question is, I don't have last year's warning in front of me. Do we normally say like not including those? I guess can we be further specific in the article, or am I missing the point?
We don't
Okay.
normally get that specific in the article. This is direct language from last year for Article 12.
Okay. Roger?
I like the way you've done it here. I like having three different votes, now that we have a new funding revenue source. And I heard from the people during our Have You Say Day events that they would like to see have the local option tax allocations charted out, as you've done here. Also was wondering about the 2024 local option tax allocations. Somebody wondered aloud whether we had authorization to spend that money, since it wasn't previously authorized by the voters.
The answer is yes, I believe you do. And that was, that money wasn't authorized by the voters because it was not anticipated to be received in 2024. So having received those having received those funds, the select board has the authority to spend those funds, if you will, or to not spend those funds. It's also a bit of a unique year in the sense that how often do you have a $450,000 windfall that was unplanned? That's pretty
Hopefully
rare.
every year.
Hopefully every year. But I think you appropriately warned all those items at multiple public meetings. So I think the people of this town had a more than adequate chance to weigh in. And the other reason that you have authorization for is select boards have pretty broad authority to not just enact the budget, but to make changes depending on the circumstances. You know, a lot of work has been done this year on FEMA projects, which were not voter authorized. They were authorized by a combination of staff and the select board because we wanted our roads passable, and none of that was budgeted. So this falls under that same bucket.
Other questions or comments, Mike?
I really like Article 13. I think in looking at transparency, that makes it very transparent as to, because it could get lost a little bit in the budget discussion. Even though it is there, I think this kind of lays out, you know, what we're doing with local options tax, and people have a right, they can speak to it on the floor.
Other questions or comments? Oh, Sandy?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that you got my thing before asking for any outside funds to be line item for the local option tax. Any request for funding be a separate line article, so that we can, the voters can vote on it. If it's an outside organization, just like the downstream.
My comment on this would be, I don't think we should say, I would ask the board's input on if we should say a recreational facility at Anderson Field. I don't dispute that is the likely location. I am wondering to what extent we want to be bound by a town meeting day. If that's more detail than we need.
Maybe
Yeah.
strike Anderson Field.
Yeah, I agree.
And I'd be happy to speak to that. I'm not trying to hide it, but in the same way we just noted, I think we would acknowledge that we hope the work would be applicable other locations.
Yep.
Any other questions? In general, I'm hearing support from the board with regards to the Article 11, Article 12, Article 13 approach of having the three separate votes,
Yep.
Including the amounts.
including the amounts.
Yep.
I'm gonna pause us here for a moment before we continue. Article 14 begins the outside funding organizations, and just have us revisit the conversation earlier about Articles 4 and 5, with a couple of specific things. One, having moved through now, at least spoken through these first couple of articles, if folks have thoughts around a different potential location in the warning that they think would be more appropriate. And then I just also want to acknowledge Chris's point around, do we want to keep both of those articles as the town meeting day warning? Kane, you have your hand up?
I will voice my support for keeping these on the vote, or on the warning for town meeting, with some nominal changes, just to make it easier to read, easier to understand. And I would also like to suggest that we move 4 and 5 behind 6 and 7, effectively making 6 and 7, 4 and 5, reversing their order in the warning.
So before the setting of the tax date?
Yeah.
Okay. Other questions or comments, Mike?
I was just gonna go put 4 and 5, I agree with Kane, but I would say just put it before what's the existing Article 9, because I think Article 8 is pretty straightforward too, and it'll take a little bit. So everyone has time to get their coffee and stuff, and get in the right frame, and, you know, we do have a lot of late attendees.
Is that a handy in?
Yeah, I guess I'll just confirm, we're moving 4 and 5, I'm sorry, 6 and 7.
So,
Yeah,
yeah,
There
my
were
board
two
was
proposals.
just switch. So 6 and 7 as a package and 4 and 5 as a package, and just switch their place in the warning.
And 2 and 3, we're hoping to move down, correct? So they effectively 6 and 7 is now our 1 and 2?
No,
2 and 3
and
are going to be on the vote.
Okay.
2 and 3.
2 and 3
Yeah.
exists, and just let us know that we're, voting
Just
by
wanna make sure.
Australian ballot. And I'll say for clarity, we have 2 proposals now around moving 4 or 5 before and after the currently drafted Article 8 around the setting of the tax date. So there was a proposal that it go right before that and right after that. You had a hand up, Roger?
I'm with Mike.
Did it go after 8?
Okay. I would lean after 8 myself, but I'm open to the board. Is that amenable?
I'm not gonna dial. Keep pulling after 8 if you'd like.
So, so recognizing, I'm actually gonna ask Tom that you wait on that, because I think it's gonna make the rest of our discussion tonight really complicated.
Okay.
And just flag that,
Yeah.
to be moved after Article 8, just so that we don't have to talk about the article formerly known as 4. So, based on tonight's drafting, and then Kane has expressed his support, I'll just offer my personal feeling, Chris, to your comment, which is that I totally acknowledge we did not have an enormous turnout for Have Your Say Day. I will say, for me, based on the amount of outreach I personally was able to do, it actually exceeded what I thought. Personally, I did a couple front porch forums. No, candidly, I did as much plugging at this meeting, but I did not have time personally to go out and make posters or some of the other outreach that I think is really important to turning folks out. My personal feeling has been that putting it on the warning lets the folks at town meeting vote on it with stakes, just like they vote on the budget with stakes. So that's been my personal support for including it, but I welcome other board members to share their reflections as well, because I just want to acknowledge this is the time to talk about it. Mike?
I think Have Your Say Day was good. I'm still a town meeting proponent, but my real question is, how did Duxbury do in terms of attendance this year?
Great question. Does anyone have information? I don't
Is
have
Lisa
information
involved?
as to Duxbury's attendance this year.
I actually
Lisa was
spoke
on
with
one.
Martha, and she said it was incredibly well attended.
Really?
Overwhelmingly.
Because I know it's been increasing, so I would just.
People find out
The
about
problem with
five.
their Have Their Say Day is the select board puts the budget forward. You can voice your opinion all you want, but nothing has to change. And it can still go to Australian ballot. So on that note, I'd like to ask, Dwight, what motivates you, Kane, to seemingly want to change everything to Australian ballot?
Well, so, Chris, we talked about Fred Tuttle before the meeting. I'm a big fan of Vermont's traditions. And I am also a fan of town meeting day and all the pomp and circumstance that comes with it. But there is enough data to show me that Australian ballot is a more democratic system than town meeting day for me to act as a proponent for changing our current system.
And you feel that people are as well informed through Australian ballot as they would otherwise be?
I feel like we are in an age where some people are informed and some aren't, and I think that's probably the way it's always been.
Other questions or comments? I see
I
Lisa
think,
with a hand
Lisa's got her
online.
hand
Yeah.
up over there.
Go ahead, Lisa.
I can just answer Chris's question. They had probably somewhere between 90 and 100 people at the Duxbury meeting, which was held on Saturday, around the same time that there was the Waterbury Saturday morning meeting. However, I mean, that was they already have changed their format, and they don't have a floor meeting like Waterbury does. I found it interesting too with the outreach, because I had multiple posts and shared it in our newsletter and on Facebook and everything about this. And I was curious to see what our turnout was going to be like as well. Given the fact that there were 2 opportunities, and there still is that backstop of, if you don't come in January, we're still going to do the same thing the same way in March anyhow. So anyway, I thought there were more people than I expected as well with those 2 meetings combined. So, but Duxbury was somewhere, I would say, around 90 people.
Must have had better pie.
I don't think we can do that.
And I'll just name, we're not doing it tonight, but when we introduce these, I think to Chris's point, if we intend, I think my understanding is the board's intent would be, if these articles were to pass and we were to change anything, we would keep doing Have Your Say Day, but certainly the article is not requiring that, nor would the board be bound in the same way as it would be at a floor meeting. So totally acknowledging that it's a different format. I think the other piece I'll just name is that We haven't run through this with Karen yet, but I also want to talk with her about voting. I will say from like the 51 South Main Street votes and big votes that have been close, we have done a checklist voter registration like we normally would do for a different type of vote where needed paper slips. And there's some town meetings we think that might happen and some where we don't. I think this is one where it's a possibility. So just noting that we probably want to, if assuming we're keeping these, be ready for that. All right, so hearing desire to keep Articles 4 and 5, place them after currently drafted Article 8. Any other comments before we return to outside funding organizations? All right, I'll flip us over there. In the interest of time, note what I am seeing in the current drafting of articles. One, noting that we will need to confirm with Karen regarding funding requests she's received. Article 14 is a lumping of all requests under the amount of $2,000 from organizations that have previously received funding in past town meetings for the same amount. Tom, did I get that right?
Correct.
Okay, so in the interest of town meeting participants' time, our standard that we all talked about as a board was if you got this amount last year, you're not changing the amount and you're under $2,000, we did a bucket. I think then I asked for special permission to not read them all 3 times, but that was Article 14. Article 15, you'll note, is an amount under $2,000, but it was a change from the amount that organization Mosaic had requested previously, which is why it is its own article as number 15. And then Articles 16 through, maybe we get to 24, through 25 were additional funding requests, again, over $2,000 or over.
And we did hear from our clerk today that the American Legion has not requested funding. That was a new article last year, I believe.
For lighting, I recall, from ARPA. Okay, so we're hearing one revision. Is there other questions, comments, feedback with regard to these in terms of how we've arranged them? If $2,000 still feels like the right standard, et cetera. Ian?
Just very quickly, Article 15, are we gonna let voters know that this has been a change? I imagine we will, but I just wanted to confirm that.
Yeah, I would anticipate yes.
Okay.
Or we can.
Yeah.
I would say in general, in practice, most of these articles are generally moved from the floor versus the select board. So just at a subsequent meeting where we finalize this, in the past, we've assigned a select board member to speak to each of these. These tend to be community organizations where we tell them, please have someone at town meeting if possible. Sometimes it's a community member with a tie. But as a board, I will say past practice has not been that we take on presenting these requests. They do have the option to put something in the town report. And Karen provides those details as well. Kate?
Just for the sake of Article 14, it's under $2,000, but it's the same request as last year.
Correct.
And the only reason Article 15 exists at all is because it's a different request than what they requested last year?
Yep, I think they were like $800 last year and they asked for an increase.
I would be of the opinion that, because it still meets the under $2,000 requirement, that it move into Article 14, and we just say that everything in Article 14 is under $2,000.
Input from the board? Mike?
Just in response to that, I think that changes where, because I know it's a small amount, but say if you went, if they had petitioned for $500 and they were going up to, $1,900, people might just want to know. And I think it's something that will go very quickly, But the other thing is, I really wish that we have, that every one of the organizations from Article probably 15 through 25 be sent a letter that we expect a representative from your organization be present at town meeting to ask questions and or make the motion for their item.
I recall having a conversation with Karen about that, and it wasn't, she couldn't do it for this year, but she can do it for next year. And I think it was a motion, I think we voted on it.
We did a policy around invoicing. as
Right.
well.
Yeah,
Rob?
It was
It was more
invoicing.
about invoice,
Yeah.
which is a totally different thing.
Right.
The thing I never like at town meeting is when we have these organizations and no one's there and someone just says, oh yeah, they're a good organization and stuff like that. I think that, to me, that doesn't cut the mustard. I'm almost inclined to vote someone down based upon that. Even if I know, I'll speak to an organization if I know enough about the organization. But if I know not enough, I'm not gonna speak, and I think we should have someone speak to, the residents to basically, I don't think that's a lot to ask. They don't have to be there, because a lot of them are not Waterbury residents, but they should be able to have someone on their board, or even someone in town who knows about that they're a member, that can speak to their group. My opinion.
Roger?
Yeah, just on Article 15, I think if we don't have that, anyone requesting an increase needs to have a separate article, then that provides an incentive for all of these under Article 14 to go straight up to $2,000.
Got it, okay.
And I don't think we want to do that.
Understood.
Great. Any other questions or comments on this? I want to flag that Sandy did have a request around outside organizations. We have some both embedded in the budget. We have some, water, I'm recalling correctly, was 2024 local option tax funding. So as of now, we have not included any 2024 local option tax funding on the warning, and I just want to name that for the board. Does anyone have input or comments on that?
I would say we're trying to think about post-recusal status for votes, and I'm not a lawyer, but I think even if we held that vote again, which I think we could do, right? That the vote passed unanimously, so unless anyone's changed their, it did not? No?
4-1.
Then my memory doesn't serve.
Oh, I watched those over and over.
That's good, it's why it's recorded.
All I was going to say was, I would feel as though the vote would pass again with Ian's recusal and the one down vote. But I don't know if we can, I'm not a lawyer.
I'll let Sandy respond. I guess to me, the more appropriate demarcation on this is if we're voting on any of the 2024 local option tax. And I will just say that for me, and I guess to me, like, that's a board question. I will agree it's an oddity. In one sense, it was raised at Have Your Say Day, and personally, my inclination was, that's fine, let's do it. I will say it's a little weird for me in that I'm happy to defend that allocation of funding to voters across all organizations, both our internal pay down and this specific request. Given that everything else is framed as a 2025 budget, that's where I'm having a little trouble squaring it, and I don't know to what extent, like, an advisory article is weird. I just will name, like, we have specific things in 2025 that we're asking for. It does not account for the full amount we will have, and to me, like, that's a bigger question, but personally, I find it odd to have just one portion of 2024. To me, it's we do all of 2024 or now. Sandy?
But if you don't allocate that funds in 2024, then it's gonna roll over to 2025 funds, so what difference does it make? It's not like that needed to be done that meeting. And the reason why I went back and watched it after I was told was I wanted to make sure that he didn't say anything, and he did. He made two very strong points. So to me, that in itself tainted it, you know. He did, he made very strong points. So no matter what you vote, if you voted again, you've heard him. So that's why I feel like it needs to be separated from the board, and it needs to be asked of the voters. Or they can petition it. They wanna come back and petition it for next year or something. But they said they were gonna do it anyways, whether we gave them the funds. So, and it isn't until April, according to Alex, so there's enough there was enough time to have moved it. So that's just my, sorry.
No, thank you. Any other comments, questions for the
Could I
board?
ask
Chris?
Tom a couple questions.
Yep, I'm gonna note, we are 4 minutes over right now, so I'm working hard on my agenda timing as chair, so just naming for the two of you, like 3 minutes max combined.
So Tom, elimination of Articles 4 and 5, what does that do for town meeting? Does it completely gut town meeting? What's left, if anything? And if a budget vote goes down, what's that process look like?
I mean, Article 4 and 5 would move, if voted in the affirmative, would move everything to Australian ballot.
The following year.
The following year. If the budget is voted down, the select board goes back to the drawing board, just like the school districts do.
From a time factor, readdressing the new budget, depending on what it is, and then putting it back out for vote again, you talking a month, month and a half, 2 weeks?
I don't want to give you an exact, but you've got to legally warn the meeting again. So, it's likely a month.
So does that mean that the town kind of operates on a shoestring for that interim?
Yeah, the rule of thumb is, because you're obviously voting on a budget, you're partway through the year, is anything discretionary, you wait until it's approved by the voters. So that the planning commission wants to spend their consultant money, traditionally the answer would be no, because that money is discretionary and not approved yet. Town staff traditionally get raises after the time period where which you can challenge a town meeting day vote. So that doesn't happen until April. So that same rule would apply presumably for 1 more month if there was a revote of the town budget. Long term, I'm not gonna go too far down one here, but I love the idea of a town having a fiscal year budget, where you move to July 1 for that exact reason.
Getting edgy, but we're not going there tonight. Amy, I see you have a hand up, and then I'm gonna move us on from this item. Amy, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I've been capturing some notes. I got lost in some of the conversation, to be honest with you. So a couple points here relative general. The communication planning. Do you folks have a plan relative to this? As I'm sitting here just listening, it sounds like, and I was really glad to hear you, Tom, say the fiscal calendar. So lining up that fiscal planning with the ability to also capture community input when it makes sense for the community. And so that's like, if you can extend that capture time throughout the year, like for example, sending out a notice perhaps in addition to our property taxes, but also warning strategic ideas or things of that nature a little more in advance. And then I wanted to get specific about the local option tax. So I couldn't hear everything, but was the discussion asking for full transparency of 2024 funds, or was that a question on the table?
Yeah, the question was regarding if we wanted to add an item to the 2025 warning regarding the spending for 2024 local option tax, which has already been authorized by the select board using our existing authority for unbudgeted revenue in 2024.
Yep. Yeah, no, I don't know the particulars on your rights or not, but in terms of full transparency, I'm not quite sure there's a con to that. So to me, it feels like, as I'm sitting here listening, like, yeah, I'd want to know where you spent it and putting it out there. But I think, are you asking about decision making? Like, meaning that the taxpayers can say, hey, no, you didn't, we didn't approve you spending it that way?
And the money's been spent.
Yeah, well, that doesn't mean they can't not like it. But I guess that's what I'm asking is like, what are you specifically trying to decide?
I was specifically asking for board input around if they need a desired item, noting that we don't have all the legal and related questions in front of us. I guess I will just name, in terms of transparency, I think the board all anticipated reporting on those items in the town report. So I'll just name, we anticipate a full breakdown of the revenues we'll have, as of the published date of the thing and the ways in which the 2024 revenue was spent. So I would just name that first with regards to transparency. And then moving forward for transparency, our process had been to include specific items in the warning as we're proposing for 2025. Seeing as 2024 town meeting already happened, I named, just speaking for myself, that I was not sure how to address that in that regard, since this is a 2025 budget, and asked for input from the board. I don't think I heard anything specific, but please, if anyone has anything. All right, and the last thing is I would just note, Amy, I also hear your comment about communications. And again, would just name, I think that's part of the goal of having Martha here tonight from the Planning Commission to talk about the work they're doing and input. It was part of our work having 2 additional meetings over the past month to explicitly have a slideshow and draft budget materials available for presentation. So I think those have been positive steps I've seen during my time on the board to increase transparency and communication, but it's certainly something we're always thinking about.
Yeah, no, I wasn't actually criticizing what you have done so far. I think it's been great. It was more about more multimodal. So are there other ways in addition to what you're doing? Yeah.
No, agreed. I'm happy to think about it. And again, I was just answering for this budget and agenda item what we've been working on. All right, it's 8:40. I'm gonna
Just
put
one
us
real
on.
quick
Go
thing.
ahead.
Do we not have an article, like for other business? I know it kind of ends at Article 25.
No.
I always thought we had something about other business.
No, that was a topic of conversation, I think, last year.
I know, because
You can
something
only-
can't legally come before.
Right, you can only have a discussion on what's legally warned. And-
Right.
And so, there was a discussion 2 years ago about town meeting day, and that was warned as a discussion, if you will. So, you could have an other business article, but it couldn't be a legally binding conversation in
Right.
any way.
And that's why I thought, the only why I'm kind of even saying that is like, let's just say the budget issues go down. They don't want to go to Australian ballot. I think we also need to know if people would like to continue the idea with have your say day in conjunction with town meeting. And that's where I think, I don't think it would be specific to have that as a warned item, because that's, we don't want to put in the voter's mouth whether it should go up or down. But I think that's something that should be discussed. If it does fail those 4 and 5, do we want to still continue doing have your say day too?
Then the select board can always call a meeting and doesn't need special voter approval to do that. I actually had a short conversation with council about that and including language in Articles 4 and 5 related to what the select board would do if there was no town meeting. But then you get into a lot of wordsmithing and a lot of challenges that go with that. And so I think simply having it as part of the conversation, whether you call it have your say day or pie for breakfast, that you're committing to essentially getting the budget information out there before the vote. But
Right.
I think if you warn it, crafting that language is really tough, but then, you've essentially likely got to set a date. And I think to some extent
Right.
that's difficult because it depends on the year, it depends on the budget, depends on the select board itself.
That's why I say as a non-binding kind of, but to see if people think, hey, this was an interesting exercise, but we don't want to do it, or we want to continue to do it. If Australian ballot is not enough, they don't want that as the option.
Do we have an action? I guess we can look at last year's with regards to, I will name, that's what we did with town meeting day format for years.
Right.
Before we had it as an article, but it was non-binding and it was advisory and we didn't
Right.
get a ton of feedback. So I'll just name, like for me, that's part of the motivation of having it as a true Harpo article, because we tried that. And
No, I understand why it should
But,
be an article, but to me, I would like to hear from voters as to if they feel that's a valid exercise and, something that we should continue to do.
I mean, we could
We can still-
All right, Kane and then Roger, and then I gotta move us on.
Yeah, we could consider a non-binding resolution as an act of, we plan on doing this further, but we don't have dates set up. As a show of faith, I guess. It's like, this is our plan, but we don't have dates right now.
It's another informational event.
Right.
Roger?
I would support Mike's proposition. Just the other thing that we didn't put on this agenda was whether we should change the time of town meeting from Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock to either Saturday or maybe perhaps a Monday night, which could be other options, which might work better for people that have to work on Tuesday.
I think
So-
most people have to work on Tuesday.
So I'm hearing two proposals in terms of Tom asking council what the allowability is of a non-binding advisory article to seek additional input regardless of outcome. Wherein, regardless of outcome, on Tuesday, March 4th, we can address plans moving forward. On the board? Any objections to that?
No.
All right, Tom, I'm gonna do the rundown best I can. So what I heard with regards to our morning conversation, is that we had some, hold on, I gotta go through it all at once now. We need to finalize Article 2 and 3, desire to move Article 4 and 5, keep them on the warning, but move after currently drafted Article 8. We made some minor wording changes to Articles 10 and 11. The board kept the proposals or supported proposals for Articles 11, 12, and 13 with
And-
regards to budgeting.
And I had, correct me if I'm wrong, for Article 4 and 5 to add as opposed to 4 vote.
Thank you, yes. With further specificity as to the implications. And then we, minor wording changes on 13 to get rid of Anderson Field. And then we kept the Articles 14 through 25 as drafted, though noted that Article 24 will be omitted after further review. So based on this, we will plan to re-review this at a subsequent special meeting, which we'll schedule at the end of our meeting tonight, where we can talk about what select board member is taking what articles. Any other things? I didn't restate that we're gonna do total budget amounts and articles, but that will also be for our final review.
Do we want to put a placeholder for the legislative reports and for the Keith Wallace Award?
Great question. Keith Wallace was on my mind. I would say in practice, my understanding, Roger, correct me if I'm wrong, is the legislative reports tend to be ad hoc as available, given that our
Right.
legislators have
They have to
multiple
move
communities
around.
they go to. And same with the Keith Wallace, so I'll be sure to touch base with Skip Landers.
Yeah, I think the moderator has the jurisdiction to insert those items as they become, as she finds the right time to bring them up.
Great. And I'll also note that our moderator was CC'd on the email with this for the legal review, and we can invite her to the next meeting if she has questions or anything like that. All right, with that, we are right about at time for the next item, but I would note that we have, I keep saying it wrong, say it for me, Kane?
Wesley?
Wesley, sorry, to those pronunciators out there. Wesley United Methodist Church parking agreement. We have a draft agreement with some blanks for dates and also the number of parking spaces. Tom, do you have anything to add to this?
Met with Skip late Friday, so the version in front of you is slightly different than the version that was in the packet posted to the website. Nothing huge, nothing huge in those changes or really all that substantive. But this has been now reviewed by our council. Appropriate insurance language was added that essentially our insurance is extended to the lot, but just the lot, not the building.
Do you have
Go ahead.
an idea of how the town would enforce the restrictions?
Same way we do now, we have a private service that we call that would tow vehicles.
Just tow vehicles that are parked there overnight?
Yeah.
And is it 20 spaces?
15 to 20, depending on how it's striped. And we're thinking one handicap space. So if this is adopted by the select board, signed by the church, I would come back to you a later date to amend the town's parking ordinance. But until both parties ratify it, I want to delay that minor expense.
Lisa discussed the parking agreement on WDEV this morning.
And the reality is, it's being used already.
Right, people
Yeah.
are probably thinking,
I park
you know,
there.
they see the construction going on, they say, what's going on?
Great. So, further questions or comments from the board?
It's all, looks pretty straight and narrow to me.
All right, Ed, Roger, then Ian. Roger?
I'll move to accept the proposed agreement.
Okay.
Second.
Motion from Roger, second from Kane to approve the parking agreement for 56 South Main Street in Waterbury with the Wesley Methodist Church of Waterbury. You want to authorize the municipal manager to sign that?
I do.
All right, motion second. Any further discussion or questions? Ian, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I'm just going to very quickly, and it's not a big deal, but it does say reservation of use. The church are not required to notify the town or the public before closing the parking lot. I'm guessing that's gonna be signed if that's the case. If, you know, how to inform the public that it is closed. Again, it's not a big deal, it just.
Signs, cones, and,
Okay.
and talking through that, one draft had limited their number of times they could use it. The reality is, it's pretty rare they would make that request.
Okay.
Any other comments or discussion? All right, and then I'll call it to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Right, we've approved the parking agreement and authorized the municipal manager to sign it. Next up, we have municipal ethics per Act 171. I will turn this over to Tom, but just note that this was a act passed by the legislature. There are some deadlines for things we have to do. Some of those are by the end of this month, and one of those is to appoint a liaison to the State Ethics Commission. Other than this, Tom?
Let's get to there, just trying to share this appropriately. So if I share.
Yep.
Can people see that?
Yep.
Just a few things.
We're on the Vermont League of Cities and Towns website.
So let me first start here and just remind folks, so the select board has a conflict of interest policy already. And then secondly, on the town website, under the select board tab, there is a area to report a notice of open meeting law violation. There's a place where someone can report a notice of an open meeting law violation. So
Probably
the new ethics law, I didn't write you a memo because VLCT sums it up really well for us. And I think all of this is possible to review draft policies at our regularly scheduled meeting on the 3rd. Mostly because VLCT has drafted those examples for us, but the long and short, and there's a little bit long, and I can go through these. So there's a municipal ethics code posting. The short version is the select board has to adopt a code of ethics and post that on the website, and so I will have a draft for you on the 3rd. If not, the special meeting before then, if time permits. And that would include a process for enforcing and investigating any complaints. Second is whistleblowers have, municipal whistleblowers have some protections under the law, which they previously had under state law, but state employees previously had it, that's essentially been extended to municipal employees. And that's nothing earth-shattering, it simply says that you can't retaliate against someone for a whistleblower complaint. The next one is staff and officer complaints, and that essentially says that the select board must designate either one of its members, move this here, or an employee to serve as a liaison to the State Ethics Commission, and designate that person to receive complaints that allege violations of the Code of Ethics. So I suggest that that person be me. I think I'm the appropriate person, and if there's a complaint that is significant in nature, I've got access to the town attorney. If you wanted to consider someone else, that's perfectly fine, but in the short term, that person can be me, and you can make a change at a later date, but you've got to have that person assigned by the end of the month. So that would be the one action I would request tonight, but if you want to step up and do it yourself, I'm perfectly happy to not be the municipal officer who's assigned here.
Questions or comments on this? Keith?
I guess my concern is with that specific rule. So say you nominate or make effectively one member of the select board or the town manager your liaison to the ethics committee and designate them to receive complaints, but the complaints would be about a town manager or the select board.
Your policy would obviously have a backup if the complaint is about
Right.
an individual. So your select board chair is a reasonable backup person. And it's interesting because in many other states, there's a requirement, or at least a strong suggestion, that a non-employee or non-select board member, non-member of the governing body, be the ethics liaison. So oftentimes you'd try to appoint an independent third party, and Vermont's law is a little unique in that regard. For Roger.
Oh, go ahead, sorry.
I move to nominate Tom as our ethics liaison.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to nominate Tom as our ethics liaison, and I'm just reading the form email I got from Christina, who's the executive director of the Vermont State Ethics Commission, presumably because I'm chair, that just says it should designate an employee as its liaison to the State Ethics Commission. If it does not have employees, then the legislative body shall designate a letter, and we just have to give them the contact info. So.
And
that's
then
just
part two
additional
is you could
background.
designate me to be the person to receive the alleged violations of the Code of Ethics.
Okay, we'll stick with this first motion right now, which was motion by Roger, second by Ian, to nominate Tom as the liaison to the State Ethics Commission. Do you have a comment there?
Yeah, I would like to amend the motion to include that the select board chair be the backup to the ethics officer, as kind of was recommended by Tom. And that way you don't have to keep on going back and forth, because as a select board, don't have a person's name, have it be the chair, so it just goes to that position.
Okay,
I'll accept the friendly amendment.
Ian, you seconded it, is that okay? I haven't read my Robert's
I was
rules. We
looking
can
at you.
vote on the amendment like it's town meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Can you have a comment?
Just voicing my concern over, nothing against you, Tom, but electing that the town manager be the person receiving ethics complaints sits weird with me.
Well, and I believe this is the liaison to the State Ethics Commission, and I do not know what that means. It just
I don't
says,
really.
once you have appointed it, please reach out to Peggy with the liaison's name and contact information. We will add them to our list for future communications. And mean that we did separate it from the motion around acting on it. Mike, then Roger.
In response to your comment, Kenny, I think you're thinking of more it being an employee ethics complaint versus a resident ethics complaint.
Which is why it also feels weird to designate someone on the select board to do that as well, especially if there are ethics complaints.
Right.
It feels like weird gray water. That's my only critique. There's nothing, I can't critique the legislature for how they wrote the law.
Which you'll know, for public record, does not employ to the legislature. We have an ethics standard, the legislature does not, but I digress. Go ahead, Roger.
I think the point that Tom made is that he has direct access to counsel is sort of the reason that I think it's the right move to nominate him is that he can refer to legal counsel as to what the complaint is and how it complies or doesn't comply with the ethics statement that we adopt on the 3rd.
Sure.
So I think he is the logical person.
Okay.
Other questions or comments? So the motion as amended is to designate the town manager as the liaison to the State Ethics Commission, the select board chair is the backup. That was made by Roger, seconded by Ian. Any further discussion, questions or comments? Right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I'll abstain because I was named as the alternate. Any other questions? All right, Tom also requested a second motion, which is to designate him as the one to receive complaints.
Yep, essentially item 2 on the screen here.
As the designated complaint receiver to receive complaints alleging violations. Is there a motion in that regard? Roger?
I'll move to designate Tom as the recipient of the complaint violations.
Is there a
I'll
second?
second with an amendment, if I may, to name town manager and not Tom specifically.
Good idea.
Town manager, yes. Accept.
So we have a motion to assign the municipal manager as the officer to receive complaints alleging violations, made by Roger, seconded by King. Any further discussion, questions?
As a check and balance, should the complaints also be, should somebody else receive the complaints, even though Tom would be the one that would be handling it? Just to get us a check and balance so that all complaints are made sure to go beyond Tom or whoever is in his position.
Okay, I'll put that to the board if anyone has anyone to comment.
I'll just
Can
make
that be repeated? I didn't hear the question.
Yep, we just had an inquiry around if someone else should be notified besides the municipal manager, which is who the motion referred to. Tom, did you have a hand up? Roger?
I did not. It's a good question from a practical perspective. That's something to address when we have a full policy, which we should have pretty soon. That being said, when I envision this, I think about a separate email that would be just for this issue. And when an email comes in, you can set that email to auto forward to whoever you want, so it could practically go to the select board too, as an FYI. And I don't think that would violate anything, because whether the complaint is made about me or a select board member of the public, it would all obviously be shared as part of this. I think if you've had a violation alleged against you, you certainly deserve to know that it's been alleged as part of this. So good question, and I think that's something to be addressed in the policy, and then the practicality of how it's rolled out.
Okay, Roger?
Yeah, I would suggest that the chair of the select board be also notified.
Okay, do you want to restate your motion then?
I move to designate the town manager to receive any notices of complaint with a copy going to the chair of the select board.
Can you do a second?
Second.
Or is there any seconds? I'm not saying on the spot.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second, and then the last comment I would just add is that also we are trying to comply by this by January 30th, and I'll just name that, I would love to talk more about this and just name folks, also this is one specific process outlined by statute, and I just want to commend that, Sandy came on public comment and addressed the full board in open session, so I also don't think this is the only or exclusive way, but this is one way outlined that we have to fulfill, but just to name it's not exclusive, and certainly if folks have concerns, speaking for myself, I'd love to hear them, however they're most comfortable, but this is one that's been outlined. Amy, you have a hand up?
Yeah, again, I was trying to catch all of that, but I just, as long as there's balance in terms of, judge and jury, that's all. Thinking about the whole concept here is ethics. So I hear Kane talking about, reservations around a specific role having it and authoritative roles. So I don't know. I know Beth Jones she has some HR background. I don't know if you folks have HR support. But usually someone in that arena may be able to be also someone helpful for sensitive issues.
Thanks, Amy. Any other questions or comments on this? So we have a motion, second, designated town manager, select board chair as a backup. Any further discussion? Right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And I'll abstain again, since by virtue of position I'm the backup. And just note that it seems like we will have a follow-up to this item at a subsequent meeting agenda, but for tonight, I can email Peggy Delaney the contact info per our motions. All right, that moves us on to board committee and manager updates. Yep, Tom, sorry.
A couple more things.
Oh,
here.
there's
I just
more, so
wanted to-
sorry, I moved us on prematurely, my bad.
So the next is, again, VLCT, I can send this link out, does a great job, but by the end of September, myself, the select board, the DRB, BCA, and Board of Abatement all have to take training. It is available online. And I'm also getting an opinion about, does the definition of legislative body include the library trustees and the cemetery trustees? But there's an online training, so it's not an onerous thing to take, I think. And then just a couple other dangling participles. So there is a records retention piece related to any ethics complaints that are made. And then finally, there's an investigation and enforcement process that has to happen as part of this. And that can all be part of our, part of the ethics policy and then potentially via ordinance or personnel policy at some point. So there's quite a lot to the new law, but again, a lot of models to choose from, and VLCT has really done yeoman's work in laying this out for us, so shouldn't be too difficult to take on, because I think we have a pretty well-developed policy in front of us soon. So that's why we pay our dues. Awesome.
Any other questions? Oh, sorry, yeah,
Will
Bill.
the town ask the volunteer support organizations like the Planning Commission to have those members also comply with the ethics rules? I think we do now, but
So it would only apply to legislative and decision-making bodies.
I understand the law says that. What will the town do?
That's up to the select board.
Okay, that's why I'm asking.
You want some more training?
No, I don't want to go to training, but I think it makes sense for everybody to have some idea of the ethical obligation when they're serving, even in a volunteer capacity for the town, so it might be something to think about.
Yeah.
But no, I don't really want to go to training.
And I'll just say, to your point, folks have to follow the conflict of interest policy right now, but there are also different distinctions between folks who are voting and decision-making and folks who are advisory, because ultimately, even if you on the planning commission recommend that we allow no further development ever in Waterbury, that actually doesn't get implemented unless the 5 of us here vote and say that's okay. I'm speaking in quite dramatization, obviously, but hopefully the purpose of making the point, but heard and noted for future review for us. I'm also taking ibuprofen. I feel like we have to be really disclosing everything now, so just to be clear, I have a headache. All right, any other municipal ethics review, though noting it will be on a future agenda? Roger?
It seems as though Sandy's point was noting an infraction of our conflict of interest policy. So I think we should bring that back up at the right time, whether that's at our next meeting or at the February 3rd meeting.
Agreed.
I would agree too.
All right, now we'll dramatically move us on to board committee and manager updates. Again, this was a new item, but just with the goal of information sharing. So again, not a substantive discussion, but if there's particular highlights, particularly from those of us who are liaisons to different boards and commissions, that we want to flag either for board or public awareness, or so that we can consider them as we move into next meeting agenda. I'll start by naming that I'm on the housing task force. And that we are hosting we received a grant from the Vermont Community Foundation to do a series of trainings specifically for property owners in Waterbury interested in accessory dwelling units and that potential solution for further housing in the community. There's gonna be a series of 4 free workshops. They're all gonna be at 6 p.m. and in partnership with the library. It's through their adult education series as well, so they'll be at 6 p.m. in the SAL room and also available online on Zoom. The first one is coming up on February 11th, and it will be about zoning and permitting. The town planning and zoning staff, so both Mike Bishop and Neil Leitner, will be present to walk folks through what it actually looks like to complete the town applications. And we also will have someone from the state Fire Safety Inspection Division who's also involved, so just giving folks an opportunity to hear from those folks and ask questions. As it's something they're considering. There will be subsequent workshops on March 18th, all around design and construction, April 15th on financing, and May 13th on rental management. So mostly this is just a save the date. If anyone is interested in attending, we will put that on the municipal website as well.
Can you just get those dates again?
Yes, I was doing my very fast talking. The first workshop is Tuesday, I believe, February 11th at 6 p.m. And it's in the SAL room at the library and on Zoom on the Housing Task Force page. And then that's on zoning and permitting. The latter ones are March 18th, April 15th, and May 13th. And I would also just note a benefit of having received funding for this is that we were able to hire Cheryl Casey as a project manager to do outreach, and she's prepared a number of great materials and a press release. So I would anticipate additional news to come, but to me it felt like a relevant update for this portion of the meeting. So that concludes my updates. I will circle around the table. Roger, do you have anything?
I have no assignments.
Great, thanks. Okay, so I'm hearing maybe also a future agenda item that the Planning Commission, as you've named previously, perhaps I could share that over. Excellent. Ian?
No updates from the rec committee.
Thanks. King?
No updates since the last update.
Great. And Mike?
No real major updates.
Great.
What about the minor ones?
And I'll just commend everyone's
I was good.
commend everyone's use of pass is a really excellent option if there are updates. It's holding the space so we have it, but we don't always have to fill it. Tom, anything you feel like is relevant to share?
Yeah, a few things. On the FEMA front, late in November, we found another piece of damage. And it's been approved to be paid by FEMA, and it was actually, fortunately it was found, it was a hunter noticed it, but on Barnes Hill, where the brook comes near the road, we lost a good chunk of the shoulder. And it's something you can't see from the road, and so it went unnoticed really until late November, when we got a phone call about it from someone who was across the road, and so FEMA's agreed to pay that claim. We're hoping we can actually get that work done in the next month. Quarry's gotta get open, it's, they're putting 4-foot boulders at the base of the stream and building the bank back up. Some years ago, quite a bit before my time, I believe even before Irene, a section, the shoulder was lost a few hundred yards upstream for a similar reason. And then Alec Tuscan, our engineer, also found a spot on a bridge where the brook, on Loomis Hill, where the brook goes under, where there's some of the protective rock is gone, and there's in one space a void under one of the abutments where it's washed away. And again, that one is not yet FEMA approved, and the challenge is we've got to first produce to them essentially a pre-storm inspection report, which we're getting and working on. That's not a huge claim, but it's again something else we hope to get them to pay for. Bridge is entirely safe right now, and I'm told even in the winter they can pump concrete under the abutment and fill that void. FEMA inspectors will be there tomorrow, and they'll clamber down in the snow and take a look, and I'll watch from above. And then had a call last week with Wanda Manoli, who's the head of Building and General Services. For reasons I'm not sure, the Stanley Wasson subdivision and sale to the town had been delayed. The subdivision is fairly simple. It's an amendment to their Act 250 permit. They did that last year, and it was denied because they didn't simply note on the amendment that it's subject to the property of municipal water and sewer. It's now been completed. Updated survey was done. The prior survey was done after Irene, and it was when the town was going to use it as a municipal building. But there was some state infrastructure still on the property, and so the state retained access. No one will be able housing if they don't actually own the road frontage. So the updated survey is done, that's been corrected, so I hope at the meeting of the 3rd to have a draft option agreement before you for the town for a very low down payment can secure an option to the site. So after a year of sometimes frustrating delays, we're getting there, which is great.
One foot in front of the other.
Any other updates?
Those are the big ones.
All right, that brings us to next meeting agenda. Our first order of business is, as was outlined earlier tonight, though our next regular meeting is Monday, February 3rd, that would be too late to warn town meeting. So we need to come up with a prior date. I will name, like Tom has expressed, oh, we could do it during the day via Zoom and have alternate options. I know some folks work. We can do another Monday night meeting. I'm agnostic. I will say in my head, we were just continuing our meet every Monday thing. I have it on my calendar.
Yeah, it's already
Monday the
calendared in.
27th.
Yeah, I already have a calendar for the select board.
So I'm hearing, does anyone have a conflict with the 27th
27?
of January?
Next Monday, we're already there.
You already have it penciled in too.
Right, it
So
looks
since
like we all
already have it penciled in.
all were on the
Yeah.
same wavelength. All right, so I'm hearing that our next meeting will be technically a special meeting because it is the 4th Monday, but it will be at 7 PM in this room per usual. So that brings us to the items for that meeting. We obviously have finalized the warning based on the amendments tonight, and I would say finalized warning plus discussion of town meeting. We can re-review it, but if we're going through each one, the assign a speaker tends to be productive. Also named tonight was ethics policy, parking ordinance, revisiting the water funding. Any other particular items? And those, I would say, could be that or February 3rd, but open to input. Anyone have input on things to include?
No, I don't know how much time we want to take at our special meeting. Do we want to make it a full meeting length, or do we want to shorten it? Because I can, at this point, we can include the natural disaster preparedness manual, unless you want to do that on the 3rd.
I wasn't sure when their meeting was, because you had indicated that they wanted to review it prior to us reviewing it, which is why it wasn't on tonight's.
I think it's right before our meeting.
On the 27th?
Yeah.
Okay, with that, would you be comfortable with the 3rd, just to give us more space?
I was just trying to add to our docket.
Short meeting, good on it.
Yeah, short meeting's fine with me.
February 3rd. Tom, what do we think on ethics policies timing? Is that a February 3rd or the? Okay. Roger?
Tom and I attended a meeting that was called by Teresa and Tom, the residents of the Route 2 neighborhood back in November. Since then, the state's attorney has gotten back to us about impact statements, and I've had a couple of conversations with Tom about bringing them back in to talk about what would be an effective impact statement to solicit more effective action to provide better public safety to that neighborhood. Just wondering if whether the next meeting or the 3rd, or maybe the following meeting after that would be the right time to do that. Tom suggested that we would want to invite our legislative delegation, because they're the ones that initiated the meeting. Tom, do you have any thoughts on that?
I think the third would be
Third?
better.
Okay. And do you want me to reach out to Teresa and Tom?
Sure, wouldn't mind that.
Okay. Everyone okay with that?
Mm-hmm.
So that will be for February 3rd. Also, in our second February meeting is President's Day, the 17th, which is a Monday. We don't need to decide tonight.
There were a lot of.
We have a precedent of holding meetings on federal holidays now.
Understood. Do we want to revisit the 2024 LOT allocation on 127?
Yeah.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yeah.
Would that involve calling them back in to explain themselves again? Or are we,
No.
would it require a secondary vote?
It's a good question. I guess I would say part of, I don't know, and we should ask the time and ask council. I mean, I think there are processes of ratification or redoing a vote. I also think we've had a fair amount of discussion of 2024 LOT in general, so I'm comfortable having it as both a general housekeeping item and this particular issue, not to minimize it, but Roger, you asked for it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think, I think we can review the minutes or our own notes of the testimony that was provided, and make a vote based on what's already been presented. I don't think anything's gonna change, so I think we can just base it on what we've heard, and maybe review whatever comments that Ian may have made. I know personally I didn't base my decision on what Ian said.
Yeah, I forgot what you said entirely.
Well, can I,
Yeah, go ahead.
so I did review the policy and.
Well, and I'll just say we're not adjudicating it now, not a bad thing.
No, just want to say that it was not like totally, I was thoughtful about this. And I do know one of my comments was about the funding for the pump track, which we did not. I make a strong convincing argument about an email we received about the pump track specifically, which we did not.
We
end up
didn't choose to
funding.
fund that.
We didn't choose to fund that.
I think, again, in transparency, as we all named, we can have that as a conversation. So we did it. All right. Warning discussion, reviewing that. Parking ordinance. What do we think?
Let's wait until the Wesley Church
Okay.
signs in on the
Okay,
agreement.
so that will wait. I'll put it in the parking lot for now. Ooh,
Parking.
Parking in the parking lot. All right. Any other pressing items at this point? Ian, yeah.
Did we say Stanley Wasson might be ready for
Oh,
the
yeah.
third?
Hopefully be ready for the third.
Mm. They're gonna have like pomp and circumstance,
It's just an option.
some
So it's-
poppers.
There was,
Supply
what meeting
now.
did we
Should
wear
certainly
party
be
hats,
celebrated,
Roger?
but yeah.
Some
Oh, yeah,
firecrackers.
there was a party meeting.
There was a party hat meeting,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm not recalling the occasion. All right, any other potential meeting agenda items? I will work with,
Oh, it was, yeah, it was when the,
The
well, it
charter
wasn't,
page.
it was the whole charter, yeah, it was when the
Charter
charter passed, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
very exciting. All right, so we will work to get this agenda out on Thursday, if anything comes before then. So just noting again clearly for the record that our next select board meeting will be a special meeting on the 27th. We also will keep the meeting on February 3rd because we're all such rock stars. All right, so then to help everyone, our next item is executive session, and I tried to copy the statute from the statutes online. So noting that we have an executive session about labor relations agreement with employees. In order to go in executive session for that reason, someone would first need to make a finding that premature general public knowledge would clearly place the town of Waterbury at a substantial disadvantage, and that would need to pass before we could enter executive session for that reason. Kane?
I move to find that premature public knowledge of a labor relations agreement would place the town of Waterbury at a substantial disadvantage.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion by Kane, second by Roger. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Right, the motion passes. That means someone can make a motion to enter executive session to discuss regulations, agreements, and invite the municipal manager to join us if they so
I
desire.
move to enter executive session to discuss labor relations and invite the municipal manager.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Kane, second by Ian. All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, we'll move into executive session at 9:24 PM.